Good people, welcome into the Pack a Day Podcast Happy Hour. I'm your host, Andy Herman. You can follow me on Twitter at Andy Herman NFL. Thanks so much for being here. Super excited about this happy hour. I did send a few links out to some friends, so maybe we'll get some surprise appearances. Maybe we won't. Maybe you'll be stuck with me. I'm going to chat for about 30 to 45 minutes, somewhere in that range today. Do have some dinner guests coming over, so got to make a fire in the fireplace, cook up some food. So and I can't just do, Little Caesars or lean cuisines today. So gonna have to do some actual cooking. But like I said, I'm really excited about this happy hour. Obviously a really fun week to be talking Packers. Ian, thanks so much for the super chat to start things out. As always, super chats will go to the top of the list and I will try to get to as many questions as I can. I know Omer, not Omar, has asked about 1,000 already. So we'll try to get to some of those. But again, super chats will always go to the top. First one is a really fun question, and I'm glad you asked it, Ian. Do you see Valentine as a long-term starter at cornerback? I do. However, I do think he needs to continue to improve as a run defender and just with a little bit more of a physical presence. There's a play a few weeks ago where I forget which game it was, but he allows an easy rushing touchdown because he can't make the play in the hole. He's not been great at run defense basically all season long. Needs to be a little bit more strong at the point of attack when trying to get people to the ground and just making sure that there's no run after the catch opportunity. So it's one thing to be a good cover corner, which I think he is, and I think he's only going to get better at. But if you want to be a well-rounded corner, you have to be good in all facets. And that's going to be the really big next step for him. Now, he has all off season to get a little bit more physical. We see people make that physical jump a lot of times in their second year, first time in an NFL weight room through an off season, and hopefully he can put on that strength and really just be a little bit more of a physical player. But I think he absolutely can be a starting corner in this league. If you're going to be somebody that doesn't tackle well in the secondary, you better be a really, really good corner. That's why I say it's probably going to be easier for him to learn how to tackle than it's going to be to become an elite corner in the NFL from a coverage standpoint. But I said the other day, and I'm going to hold to this prediction. I think he pick six is Baker Mayfield in that Tampa game. Watch out. I said this a few weeks ago. Baker's been known to throw a few picks at Lambeau. Carrington's going to jump one of these times. And my expectation, my prediction is that Carrington houses one against Baker Mayfield next week against Tampa Bay. So that's what I'm going with, but I think he's a really good corner. I think he's only going to continue to get better. He has great instincts. His closing ability is special. And I like I said, I expect him only to get better as time goes on. So yes, absolutely think that he can be a long-term corner in Green Bay. Baby QB, as always, thanks so much for being a Pack a Day podcast member. Do you think they will want the ball first again? That's an interesting question. My guess is they want to go on defense first in this game. And I could easily be wrong. And I kind of almost hope that I'm wrong. I kind of want them to take the offense again and go down and try to score again. My guess is they're going to want to get their defense on the field and give them the opportunity to go get after Tommy DeVito and maybe get an early stop, get the ball, and then go get that score. But tough to say. They've obviously had success with taking the ball. They did it 2 weeks ago. Last week, they didn't have a choice. The other team, or the Chiefs, won the toss and deferred. So Green Bay got the ball. But I don't know. Maybe it's just best that New York wins the toss, defers, Green Bay can receive, and they don't even have to make the choice. But I will be intrigued if they do win the toss, what they ultimately decide. Spiked mocha. That's much different than spiced and probably a little bit better. Justice, my favorite guest, flirted with the idea of Goody for exec of the year if the Pack make the playoffs. Thoughts? Would love how it would piss off who. I won't comment necessarily on that second part, but yeah, I think the rest of this season, if they can go 4-1 or 5-0, and again, not counting any chickens before they're hatched, they need to finish this job that they've now started. But if they go 4-1, 5-0 in a fairly easy schedule, I think Goody and LaFleur are very much in conversation for either executive of the year or coach of the year, or maybe even both, because they're well ahead of schedule. Man, if they, I would be shocked if they go 5-0. Honestly, I think they're at least going to slip up once in these 5 games. They're still just a young, volatile team. But man, if they went 5-0 and finished like 11-6, like give them all the awards. Like give Matt the award, give Brian the award. They beyond deserve it at that point. So I don't think either of them care necessarily. I think both of them just want to win and continue what Green Bay has started so far this season. I'm sure both of them are stoked with the work that this team has put in to get to the point that they're at right now. But yeah, an 11-6, maybe even a 10-7 Packers team should very much be in the conversation for the executive of the year, coach of the year, those sort of awards at the end of the season. Yeah, Ian, definitely another opportunity. Pick 6 of Bryce Young would certainly be sweet as well. Anton Chigurh should not do the toss, Gary. Nothing good happens when Anton Chigurh does the toss. By the way, just really quick aside, and we don't need to get too far into this, but top 5 favorite movie moment is the last scene before I won't ruin anything at the end, but in the house where it's just him and the girl in the house and they have that conversation. She acts, I like get goosebumps thinking about it. She acts the hell out of that scene. Like my favorite maybe acting scene in any moment ever is that final scene inside the house. Just, so amazing. And guess who's here? Matt Freilich, everybody. Welcome into the show.
Greetings. Appreciate you having me. Is my audio okay? We good?
Audio sounds great, man. Welcome to the show. Like I said, I sent out a few links to some Pack-A-Day podcast people. So our first guest of the day, Matt, like I said, welcome in, buddy.
Appreciate it. That's a scary thing, just to throw links out. You know, if anyone can join almost. It's a lot of trust from you here.
Yeah, anyone can join that has the link, but I also can kick anyone out at any time as well. So
authority.
With great power comes great responsibility. All right. So Ski asks, would you ever try to get a player on weekly? And if so, who? Yeah, that is definitely something that I would love to do at some point, is do like a weekly show with a Packer. I flirted with the idea a little bit in the off season. I put one feeler out. Nothing really came of it, but yeah, I don't have anyone necessarily in mind. It would be fun if I could get like a rookie or younger player and kind of have them keep coming on as they progress through their career. But definitely something that I would be interested in long term and would love to kind of do at some point. So hopefully we can make that happen. All right, Wade, do we see Aaron Jones at all on Monday? Matt, I'll start with you here. What are you thinking?
I have in my fantasy league, because everyone cares about that, he will not be seeing the roster. He's currently on my IR spot. Well, from last week, he's currently questionable, but I don't anticipate it. I think maybe they played their hand a little bit with the Kenyon Drake signing. Also, I don't know. The Aaron Jones saga with Mike McCarthy and Matt LaFleur, almost the common denominator is we wish we could use him more. Some of that's injury influence. I don't see him getting out there on Monday. Maybe you have a different take. Maybe you have more than I do. I haven't been on Twitter a ton today, but it's kind of where I'm laying.
Yeah, I'm leaning in that direction as well. I think they can win this game in New York without Aaron Jones. And the last thing you want is Aaron coming back in another aggravation of some injury, or like then he's out again for a while. I think they're going to want to make 100% sure. I know Matt said today that like playing on the turf doesn't factor into it, but maybe it should. Like maybe don't have your first game back, be on that turf in New York, let him get his literal footing underneath him, give him just one more week, and then have him return. If he's getting close, have him return Tampa at home. That just feels like it makes a lot more sense. And you go to Carolina and can kind of finish out the season from there. But I would make sure that he's A, darn close to 100%. B, there's no risk of aggravating anything. And C, you're not worried about that turf. And if everything checks out, then great. Like you're making a push towards the playoffs. You want everyone out there that can possibly play. So if you can play, by all means do it. But my guess is Tampa is probably more likely than this week against the Giants. And like I said, I think they can be okay with that, even if he's not out there. All right, Zach, if Jordan finishes with 4,000 yards, 35 touchdowns, 15 picks on the season, where will he rank in the quarterbacks? Off the top of my head, I'd have to look at all the statistics kind of at the end of the year to see like where that would rank. But I mean, I think he'd definitely be in the like top 15 conversation. And like, depending on how he does it, like it could even be higher than that. Yeah. I'm not even necessarily so much concerned about like where he ranks. It's just that like, you found your guy at that point. I don't care if he's like 10th, 11th, 5th, whatever. Like he's really freaking good and you can win with that quarterback and he's only going to get better. So only positive things from that result. And I think prognosticators can put him wherever they want. Analysts can put him wherever they want. Analytics guys can put him wherever they want. That just means he's a really freaking good quarterback. Green Bay hit again, and we can be really positive about stuff. What do you think,
Andy, the producers did fly in some quick stats for us here real quick, referencing 2022 as a benchmark.
Yeah.
That would rank him in the top 4 for for touchdowns between Mahomes, Josh Allen, and Burrow. Burrow and Allen had 35. Okay. For yards, slightly flirting with top 10, he would be 2, 4, 6, 8. He would be the 10th one behind Trevor Lawrence from last year with 4,100. Obviously, 2022, 2023, things slightly different because now we have CJ Stroud, Sam Howell leading the charge with passing yards. Also tight end, or keep saying tight ends. Touchdowns not completed yet. So it seems to me, based off of where we're at, and if we want to prolong it or proportion it out, etc., he would be a little bit higher than a top 10 quarterback, maybe top 8, based off the statistics. Didn't really factor in interceptions, but that's kind of what the producer said. You can blame them if you need.
All right, deal. I like it. Tyler, is the Daniel Jones contract too much if Love keeps playing into the way he has, or do they do something for 2 to 3 years? I think the big thing you want to look at with the Daniel Jones contract is the guaranteed money. I think New York gave themselves no outs in that contract by guaranteeing so much of that contract. And I think that's where you need to be a little bit careful. I will guarantee you that Green Bay is going to try to give themselves as many outs as they can. It's just and that's not a Jordan Love conversation. That's just smart GMing conversation. You never want to try to back yourself too much into a corner. The Giants did, and we can kind of see how that's turning out. And so we'll see exactly. But on the flip side, Jordan's agents are going to want to get as much guaranteed as possible for as long as possible. And I think that's going to be a bit of a complicated contract because of that. I think it'll come together in the offseason. I think they'll get something done. But I think that the totals for the Daniel Jones contract may be around right, but they're going to try to cut down, I think, some of those guarantees if at all possible. What say you, Matt?
You kind of said it best. Like, they already showed their hand, right? The Giants, they were kind of in a position they had to pay. See where Daniel Jones ends up. I love what the Packers did this offseason, because it would have been just a mirage of distraction, whether or not they did the Jordan Love kind of hybrid rookie, extension. It gives us good autonomy. It gives the GM good autonomy. I like it. And even if it would have worked, I mean, it's honestly gone completely south for the Giants with how it's gone for Daniel Jones, but I like the way it's progressed for the Packers. And it seems like we just get a little bit luckier with quarterbacks than other teams right now.
Yeah, I think so too. But I think I guarantee you that whether it's from the agent side, probably from the agent side, that Daniel Jones contract is going to get brought up. And it could throw a wrench into things depending on, again, how the rest of the season goes and what Green Bay is trying to get out of that contract, what Love's trying to get out of that contract. It'll be a really interesting one. And these are never easy anytime a QB is involved. So definitely will be something to keep an eye on via the course of the offseason. All right, Andy, where are the big cap restraints outside of Bach in 24? 25 is where we are in the clear, but I can't think of other cap problems outside of the back. It's not necessarily cap problems. You still have some dead cap hits from contracts that they borrowed from future seasons. If you're looking at like bigger contracts that are on, Aaron Jones has a big contract. Devondre Campbell is definitely one of those. Jair Alexander, Kenny Clark, Preston Smith, Bakhtiari, as you mentioned. Like there's definitely more than a handful of big contracts. Now, some of those are good contracts. Some of them maybe not so much. That's where Goody and Russ Ball and company are going to have to make some of those difficult decisions. But they're also not, I wouldn't say like super restrained. Like they're not in a terrible spot where maybe they even kind of were a little bit this year, and they did a pretty good job of kind of managing themselves out of that. What you just don't necessarily want to see is all of a sudden you gain a little bit of salary cap flexibility this offseason and you go and spend it right away, or you even borrow more from the future. And like, give yourself a little bit of a breather and allow yourself to gain that financial flexibility for 2025. Again, that's kind of the way and direction that I would go with it. But they're not in a terrible spot, but they're just not in a great spot quite yet. And I would love for them to get in a great spot moving forward. Anything to add on that?
I love the spot they're in. When I'm pulling it up, I use Spot Rack quite a bit. I know, of course, our friend of the program, Ken Ingles, is a good reference for it. Kind of mixes in the how the Packers run their things. I like it. I like where the contracts are at. I look at the two that I'd be a little bit more concerned about if I need to be pessimistic. Would be Devondre Campbell, Preston Smith with their cap hits. But outside of that, you look at the top three guys: Alexander, Gary, Elton Jenkins. Those are the three you want to have on a roster. And if you're paying them, that's good guys to pay.
All right, King David. Andy, you mentioned that there was some talk of extra work going on to improve the offensive deficiencies. Can you expand on that? My bad answer is that no, I cannot. My semi answer is that this is a Mike Wall tweet. When I talked to him today, I wanted to bring that up. He brought up that he had heard. Let me see, Matt. Maybe you can find his tweet from Mike Wall 68. It was from late last week. And And he basically said something to the extent of he has heard that some of the younger players, wide receivers, tight ends, quarterback, Jordan Love specifically, have put in a little bit more time to kind of get on the same page and work together. Matt, feel free to cut me off if you find it at any point, but that's what I wanted to bring up with him. You found it?
No, I'm looking still. So from last week, just overall, like the offense, like first of all, Mike is awesome. And the question before was like having a current player on. It's great to have current players. Current players have a little bit busier schedules. Mike Wall, a great former player to have. I'm looking into his tweets right now. Kind of want to see what he's talking about.
Yeah,
you see it. He's talking more about like differences, play action, simplifying the game, pre-snap rec, wide receivers making plays. Truly, a lot of that, even from a national standpoint, was kind of highlighted this week. I remember seeing Dan Orlovsky had a good breakdown about that. Making things simple for Jordan Love, pre-snap. You just go up, execute this play, maybe a check or two. Other plays giving some autonomy to make those pre-check recognition. So that's the one I'm seeing from, looks like maybe 9 days ago from Mike.
Yeah, there's one other one. I'm going to see if I can find it really quick.
Go ahead.
Okay, he said, word is Packers wide receivers, tight ends, and QB1 have been spending extra time together getting on the same page. Crazy how preparation leads to confidence on the field. These young players just playing lights out, ID, communicate, execute, fun to watch. So that was his tweet that was December 3rd. So about 5 days ago. So yeah, that's all I have from Mike as far as like what he was saying in that specific instance. But it sounds like they're putting in some extra time. I haven't heard anything other than that, but we're like, here's what I will say about it. It doesn't get to this point where you go from a very disjointed offense early in the season where like you couldn't run simple plays to being really good on offense that we've seen these past few weeks. You don't get there without putting in the work. It just doesn't happen, especially for a really young team. Maybe if you have like a group of veterans playing together where, all right, maybe it just clicks together at some point, maybe not do the extra work, but these guys have all been there before. They've done it before, maybe. But when you have a group of young, inexperienced players, you don't just wake up all of a sudden and be like, oh, we're really good at offense now. Like it takes extra work. It takes extra care. And they've clearly been doing that because it has been really, really fun to watch. And you can see them take a very significant jump. All right. Let's see. What else do we got here? All right, we'll do this one. Wade, does the O-line have any opportunity for improvement in run blocking? Do we need new personnel? Yeah, they have every opportunity to improve in run blocking. They were worse earlier in the season, so it is a little bit better now. We are seeing more, like closer to like 4 yards per carry. Before it was like 2 to 3 yards per carry at times. So it is getting a little bit better. I don't think that this offensive line has the capability of like all of a sudden exploding into like a top 10 run offense or anything like that. I don't think that's within the realm of feasibility. Although I didn't think this offense had the ability to kind of put up the points and the just kind of overall explosive ability that they have over the past few weeks either. So this team is continuing to surprise me over and over again. Myers has been much better over the course of this past month. I think his best game of his career came against KC this past week. That's trending in the right direction. The competition has seemingly been good for both John Runyon Jr. as well as Sean Ryan at right guard. I do think Runyon, although still not great, has been playing slightly better since that competition has taken place. Elton is Elton. He's been playing really good over the course of the last couple of months. Zach Tom's been their most consistent player on the entire team over the course of the year. And then Rasheed Walker also playing better over the past month. And that competition has seemingly helped him out as well. So I think they're getting better from a run blocking standpoint. I don't know if this is just who they are or if there's a little bit more they could go, but I don't think they're all of a sudden going to be like a top 10 rush offense or anything like that.
That's such a tough thing throughout the year to fix too, right? We're talking about the offense getting better, whether it be, connection between Love to Watson, Love to Jaden Reed, et cetera. Like to fix your run blocking in the middle of the season seems very, very tough unless you're getting an invigorated person back from IR or whatever. Like, I don't know how that changes. That's nuts. And like, do we need new personnel? It's always good to have them. We constantly go into training camp and off season with 11 or 12 guys and cutting down that roster. So I would say yes, but not in the short term.
No, I totally agree. Stokes full practice both days this week. I would expect, I talked about this a little bit on the bonus episode for members that just came out like a half an hour before this, but I would expect him to get activated this week. His practice window is closing for them and their option to activate him. It'll be interesting to me to see who they release because they'll need a roster spot to put him on the active roster. I think Caillou Blue Kelly could be a key candidate there. They have 7 corners on the roster right now. Eric would make 8. I don't think they carry 8 corners on the 53-man roster. They're clearly not doing anything with Jair, with Nixon, with Valentine, and that leaves you 3 other guys. Rochelle, David Long, who they just picked up this week, and Caillou Blue Kelly. So like I'd have to look back at when they signed Rochelle. They have to basically keep him on the roster and keep that roster spot for 3 weeks. So I can't remember if his was more than 3 weeks ago. I feel like it might be. If it is, then it could be Rochelle or Kelly. If it isn't, then it probably is just Kelly. They theoretically, I guess they could just release David Long if they had him for a couple of days and are like, well, we compared him to Kelly and Rochelle, and we think Kelly and Rochelle look better. But it would seem, and they could just go a different position altogether as well. As far as like getting playing time though for Stokes, like I think he's going to have to start on special teams again. Maybe he gets some dime snaps just to kind of work him in every now and again, but I wouldn't expect Stokes to just come in and all of a sudden play a bunch of football on defense. Don't think that's good for him. Don't think that's good for the defense, and just would not expect it to go that way. Anything else there, Matt?
Really, like the Stokes thing. Yeah, I mean, you kind of, I was going to have something, and then your statement about him playing special teams more kind of triggered me, because that really irritated me when he was activated. And I realized that you got to get him in, and you can make an argument that set him back, but we'll see. I think the David Long signing I kind of liked. I like to see a vet like that, or a guy that's got some, played in a similar, I don't know how similar it is now, the Rams defense when Joe Barry was there, but David Long's a solid corner. No way they have 8 corners. That would be absurd.
Yeah, I think Long probably stays. Again, he gives them a little bit of veteran experience in that secondary. And I mean, the thing with Stokes, right? It's like, it's either he has to be active and play special teams, or you have to deactivate him. Like if you're going to be one of the 48 players, you've got to find a way to make an impact somehow. And if you're not going to be on defense, then you have to do it on teams. And if you don't want to risk him on teams, then you just have to deactivate him, which means you can't get him in for any snaps on defense if he's inactive. So they're just gonna have to kind of figure something out there, what makes the most sense for him. What are you laughing at, Matt?
It's just, I don't know. Like, it's just funny to think that Eric Stokes, we're not worried. We're going to activate him to play special teams. I get it. And I don't know. It's just a tough pill to swallow. Like, that's just really what it is. That's just how because we have special teams guys that can contribute. Eric Stokes was brought in to be a number 2 corner. And I know careers can morph and change, et cetera, but I don't know. It's just goofy to think that he'd be part of the we fence, if you will, and not on the defensive side, locking some guys up. It's just goofy to me. Yeah.
So, I mean, I guess the thought process, I think, is like, I certainly don't think that you like first game back, you want to put him in for like 60 snaps of defense, right? Like you don't want to just like all of a sudden play him a ton on defense. Like I said, I don't think that does him any favors. So I don't know that you want to take Valentine off. I don't think you're not playing him in the slot. So Nixon staying. Like you can make an argument of like, all right, let's get him in for Valentine here and there. Okay. Yes. Valentine's their best run defender in the cornerback group. Like, I don't know. Like at some point, if he's ready to go, like that's fine. Like put him out there and see what he can do. I just think you kind of ease him along, get him some football action first, maybe get him some dime snaps, then kind of maybe see if he's playing well. If he's playing well, then maybe put him in the conversation to maybe get one of those corners out there. But yeah, I think it's just going to be a little bit of a process. And I know that kind of sucks for a former first round pick, but I think that's just kind of what it has to be right now.
I agree.
All right. Watson out, next man up, Dontavian Wicks. You betcha. You're going to see 4 wide receivers in this game. You're going to see the same guys that we've been seeing: Romeo Doubs, Jaden Reed, Dontavian Wicks, and then Malik Heath. Like those will be the 4. They'll rotate them through. They all do things a little bit differently. Don't expect Watson to play in this game, but they're in good hands with those 4 wide receivers. They'll get Kraft involved. They'll get a little bit of Ben Sims. They'll get the running backs involved. They still have plenty of options within this passing offense. So Watson definitely missed, but I'm excited to see Dobbs and Wicks and Heath and Reed get even more playing time. So they'll be just fine there.
I'm cool with all these guys, right? Too. It's fun to see them evolve, and wherever we fell on them in July and August, it's kind of continued to grow. I remember going to I think it was the inter squad practice with the Patriots, and Malik Heath, boy, he could not get on the same page running just a regular RPO slant to try to, and he's developed. Wicks has developed as a young guy. It's battled through injuries. It's awesome to see these guys continue to go. And the Jaden Reed one, just, man, you give that guy opportunity, put him in space, get him in motion. I don't care who's ahead of him in the depth chart. He's making it very difficult for him not to be in the offensive game plan more and more each week.
Yeah, no, totally agreed. Ruben says, what is the most dangerous team in the upcoming schedule? I don't think there's a dangerous team on the schedule. I think there's some dangerous situations, or at least some things that I'm kind of keeping my eye on. I actually think like this game coming up against the Giants is the one that I'm most not nervous about, but just intrigued by. I want to like it almost feels like you're turning a page from this very difficult portion of the schedule to this easier portion of the schedule. You're now in the number 7 seed. Your playoff destiny is in your own hands. And now you've got 5 winnable opponents, with the Giants on the road being the first one. And I want to see how that transition goes to it. Sometimes it's a little bit easier to get yourself up for a Thanksgiving game and for a Kansas City Chiefs game against some big time opponents. And Jordan Love's circling the Chiefs game on his calendar. Now you've got the Giants and Tommy DeVito, and it doesn't have that same pizzazz. Thankfully, it's on Monday Night Football. It's still prime time. It's still kind of this big game, New York City. So you still kind of feel a little bit of that, but I want to see how Green Bay responds and if they have that same effort, energy, intensity. Because if they do, it is very, very clear that if they have that same energy, focus, intensity, and are playing that style of football that they have the past few weeks, they're like at least going 4-1 in these 5 games. If they don't, if we see the Green Bay team that showed up earlier this season shoots itself in the foot a lot and doesn't have that same level of intensity and focus, then these games are losable at any given moment. So I'm most interested in this one, just to kind of continue that momentum and take it in the right direction. If I had to say the team that I think is still most dangerous, I would still put Minnesota on the road as probably my most dangerous.
Dang, you really sold me on the Giants. I thought I was going to be able to be a contrarian. Definitely Minnesota. That's the way I look. Justin Jefferson coming back this week. Minnesota on the road. They're going to have something to play for getting in the playoffs. I know they've kind of had a lull here recently. Josh Dobbs exposed a little bit on national television, but that game is going to come down to an important one. And I think also the Chicago game. They're not going to be in playoff contention. They're worried about their picks at a certain point, or whoever's picks they're going to be getting. But those final 2 games, definitely the Minnesota one that I have circled. That's going to be an interesting. A lot of football that weekend. We got college football. We got New Year's Eve football with the Packers. It's going to be fun.
Yeah, it's going to be very fun. Omer says, I'm nervous. You know this, Rundy. Andy, how can you not be? Yeah, I'm nervous. The only thing that gives me some, cause for optimism coming up this week is the fact that the Giants offensive line is not good. And it's not like this is I know Barkley's obviously very good, but their run game in general is not like this dominant, completely devastating running game. And it doesn't mean that Green Bay can't make them into one. They will do their best, I'm sure, to try. But I think that they can match up well against this Giants offensive line and hopefully contain them. If they can't, it just is. It obviously is super frustrating. But I think they can beat up this offensive line this week against New York.
Yeah, I never count out how the run D can perform or not. I mean, last week it was decent, but Pacheco still was getting his really, and even with McKinnon back, he was still able to be slightly effective. The offensive line for the Giants is terrible. We know that, but it's still Saquon Barkley. He still can produce. I don't know. We'll see. I'm. It's like the special teams thing. We talked about this at the. I asked you, Andy, when we went to the Match State Brewery for the Q&A. I was like, "Isn't it great we're not talking about special teams as much anymore?" You're like, "Yeah, it's awesome. It's cool." That's what I feel about the run game, run defense. Like, hey, we don't talk about it for a week or two, and all of a sudden we get gashed for $180. Like, it's not fun.
New York Cheese said, I agree. Stop the run. And we've talked about it all week. I'm not breaking any news here, but this is the game to learn from the Steelers game earlier this year. Like, make Tommy DeVito beat you like you needed to make Kenny Pickett beat you. You didn't make Kenny Pickett beat you. You let 200 plus rushing yards on the ground beat you. You can't have that same mistake this week. Play guys up closer, play an extra safety in the box. And then you've got to get the results too, because as Matt mentioned, there are times where there's been an extra safety in the box, just going back to this past week against KC, and they're still getting big gains. So it needs to be better from an execution standpoint, but you cannot play in that too high shell all game and let Saquon beat you and not make Tommy DeVito beat you. So this is going to be definitely something of, did they learn from that loss to Pittsburgh? And hopefully they did. All right.
I'm interested to see what Omer said about, he said, Andy on the mark with that comment. I want to know what that was. I must have missed it in context, but I would love to know what that was.
I'm assuming like learning from the Steelers game, maybe, but could be totally wrong. All right. Pete, is Love's biggest strength his mental game or his physical game? That's a great question. Do you have a take on this, Matt?
I think you could make an argument either way. I'm going to say mental, and that's, you could go either way. I think the way he's carried himself this year, carried himself since he was brought into the Packers has been damn good, almost to a point where, like, does this guy get rattled? Is he going to make a statement about how he feels about being a backup, et cetera, et cetera? You don't see him having a temper tantrum on the sideline or with his young receivers, a la his former Aaron Rodgers teammate. I think the way he carries himself and with his swagger, his mental capacity translates to having some, physical ability. He's able to unleash that arm at times and throw it deep. He's so steady, Eddie. It's unbelievable. I'm waiting for him to crack, but I have yet to see that. And that's, I think, what it takes to be, a great quarterback in this league, or a great professional, whatever you're doing, athletics or business.
I'm with you. I think his ability to come in, be the backup for the first few seasons, learn, absorb, and be ready once his number was called, I think shows a lot of great mental fortitude. I think he's got extremely high emotional intelligence and the way that he handles everything. And then it doesn't help, hurt that he's got the strength, the arm strength, the running ability, everything like that to go along with it too. This is not a mistake that Goody spent a first round pick and moved up to do it. And let me just go back to that for a moment. The Jordan Love archetype of quarterback was not my cup of tea at the time when they drafted him. The developmental guy that struggles a little bit with accuracy coming out of college, playing at a smaller school, struggling in his most recent season, has some interception flaws in his game. That's not generally my cup of tea. Before Green Bay drafted him, I still had a late first, early second round pick grade on Jordan because his great stuff and his really good stuff was unbelievable. I mean, it was so good. And his sophomore season, man, you go watch his sophomore season from beginning to end, which I promise you I did. It's phenomenal. It is really, really fun. And you add in the fact that in his leadership and his mental strength, that was known pre-draft. That's not something that he developed. That was there pre-draft. The arm strength is there. The running ability is there. He's everything that you needed to see from a high-end quarterback in college, he displayed. Now, was he still a project? Yes. Did he need time to develop? Unequivocally. But there's a reason that Goody went up and made that selection. There was no guarantee it was going to turn out. And for a couple seasons there, it certainly looked like it probably wasn't going to work out. And we had questions even going into this season if it was going to work out. But that there was no question as to whether or not, in my opinion, he was a late first round pick caliber player. And it's paid off huge because when you add a guy that has leadership traits, high emotional IQ or EQ, IQ, mental, fortitude, and all the physical traits, you get the makings of what could be a high-end top 10 quarterback in this league. You still have to nurture him. You still have to develop him. But Green Bay gave him that opportunity. They gave him the time to sit behind Aaron Rodgers. They gave him 3 years to sit, watch, learn, develop. And then they set him free. And so far, the setting free portion's been really, really fun to watch.
Andy, I got a follow-up to that question. I know you coach soccer, played soccer. Accuracy, is that a physical thing or a mental thing? Throwing, kicking. I know. I'm trying to think what it is. That's his biggest problem, right? We need a little bit of deep ball accuracy, but I'm wondering where that falls.
Yeah, I think the first thing is his fundamentals. And I mean, anyone who watches QB school can, quote verbatim some of the issues that Jordan has, just kind of making sure that he's got his feet wide, he's planted, he's facing the right direction, all cleats in the ground, all the things that, I can regurgitate from QB school. So it usually this is not a Jordan thing. It starts with your footwork. And Aaron says all the time, it starts with your legs down. Quarterbacking starts from the legs down. When I go and turn on a QB tape from a college, and when I do this for Caleb Williams, Drake May, Daniels, everyone else, the very first thing I will be watching are the feet. And it's not that it's something that you can't necessarily develop, but usually really good quarterbacks are they're marrying everything up with their footwork. And that's where it all starts. So Jordan still has things that he can do to improve his footwork moving forward, and that will help him with a lot of it. I think the other thing, even as of more recently, go back a month ago, it felt like you could see Jordan thinking through his deep throws a little bit more. Somebody at the very beginning of this chat asked something of he seems to underthrow deep balls. Is that a physical strength? No, he has all the arm talent that he needs to get the ball where he wants to on the field. I have zero concerns or questions about that. But he needs to get back, plant appropriately, marry his footwork with the throw, rip it from the bottom up, from the legs up, and just spin that thing and not question it, not think about it. And I think we've been seeing a lot more of that over the course of the past few weeks, of just a little bit better fundamentals, but a lot more confidence and just kind of gripping it, ripping it, throwing it down the field, and not thinking of like, do I need to throw this high? Do I need to get more air under it? Do I need to put on, like, just see it, throw it, do it. And that has been, I think, one of the real keys for success for Jordan lately.
Heck yeah.
All right. What else do we want to talk about here? All right, Omar, one more. I said all season, give the man a run game. Look at Love's play action numbers the past 3 weeks. They're off the charts. They very much are, but need a run game and or a short passing game to open up this offense. I think if you guys want something to be really excited about, it's the fact that this offense is still in its infancy. There are still things that are missing from this offense to be a high-powered, really big-time attack. The run blocking we talked about, the consistent running game. Jordan has had to play a lot of this season either from even or behind in the score. Like, there haven't been a lot of games where Jordan's just been able to play with a 10, 14 point lead. And part of that's due to the offense, no question about it. But like, a lot of times the offense gets a lead and the defense gives it right up. So he's constantly playing in these high leverage situations. There has not been a consistent running game. Even some of the running stuff that they have done has had to have been a lot of like gadget stuff or Jordan on, read option keepers or things like that to try to get some of those explosives. And the offensive line, it took time to come across. The wide receivers and tight ends are still babies within this offense and within the NFL. Like, this all has the ability to get better. It's not like Jordan in his first season is running the 49ers offense right now with one of the best offensive linemen and lines in football, with George Kittle and Ayuk and Samuel and McCaffrey and all these like high-end players. And it's like, well, yeah, he's playing fine, but like, if you take all that away, can he be good? It's like, no, he's playing with a lot of these challenges right now, and he's still playing well. Imagine if you get him some of those high-end weapons and these guys develop around him. That to me is really, really exciting.
Isn't it funny, Andy? I don't know, maybe I missed this back in the day when I was watching football as a young youth, but I think over the last couple of years, like just seeing the way that Kyle Shanahan runs an offense and the branching off of Mike McDaniel, it's interesting to see how much that needs to synergize, right? This isn't spread them out, make one read. They have so many things that are integral, from the offensive line, the run fits, the running, when to call plays, a certain route cross. It's crazy. And I think there's so much of that needs to be incorporated when you have a young team, like you mentioned, the babies on the offense that need to be there. Yeah, no, 100% well said, and could not agree with you more. All right, Greg, good question here. Are there any lessons, positive or negative, that today's front office could learn from past front offices of the past 15 to 20 years? No need to answer if you've already covered this. I have not covered this, Greg. So, and I do have an answer for this as well. I think the first thing is all the really good lessons from Ron and Ted that have been handed down. Goody's got all that. There's no question about that. He's learned a lot of those things from them, and you can tell there's still the draft and develop philosophy and how to find talent and all the scouting things. Like, he has that. For me, if there's one thing that this front office and just sort of Green Bay team and structure still needs to do, it's when you have that opportunity, when a Super Bowl season or a Super Bowl window is staring you dead in the face, is to really, really take advantage of it. And I think we're like going back to Ted, and certainly with Ron did, right? Like in 96, like he goes and gets Keith Jackson. He brings Andre Rison in midseason, Eugene Robinson, Sean Jones, Santana Dotson. Like, he never stopped. He was constantly being like, we got to get more. We got to get more. Desmond Howard, like all of it. He went free agency, trades. He went for it. There's no question about it. During the Ted era, there were fewer teams doing that, but Ted had opportunities. Some of these fell through on the other side of things too, but I'm sure if he upped the ante a little bit, whether it was guys like Tony Gonzalez, Jason Taylor, Randy Moss, there were a lot of, and some of those maybe like Randy maybe not have turned out either, but there were opportunities to add in some of those seasons. Ted left the cupboard. Like, Ted would rather go with like an undrafted corner and bring the next guy up than be like, let's go trade for somebody and spend some future draft picks. There were mistakes that were made at that time by not spending free agent money, by not using some of those, future draft picks to bring in talent when the window was open. Even I think in 2020 and 2021, in 2020 specifically, I think there were opportunities to, maybe borrow from the future a little bit more, specifically even maybe using some future draft picks.
listen, if you want to go get Jordan, that's fine, but then maybe use a future first to move up in another round and still get a player that could help you right then and there. So I think there's just when that window is really wide open and you are within fingertips away from potentially having a Super Bowl trophy in your grasp, I think it's imperative that you strike when the iron's hot and you do everything in your power to go and get those players that you need to see that through to completion. Because, whether people want to drag Green Bay for the 2 Super Bowls in 30 years, I think most fans and most franchises would take 2 Super Bowls in 30 years. But I think you can also make the argument if Green Bay's maybe just a little bit more aggressive in a couple of those seasons surrounding those years, maybe they have 3, maybe they have 4, and maybe things feel a little bit different. So that's where I would kind of go with that.
It's such a good question. Like, I love it. Like, in a microwave society, we forget week to week basis, right? Like 10, 20 years of what this front office has done as successful as they have been. I love that answer about the couple players you even rattled off, Andy, from that we could have acquired. The other one that came to light in the last 6 to 9 months was the Marshawn Lynch potential of the conversation. Now, again, the guys we've named, all very high profile. I don't know how much tread they still have in the tires at the time, but he is still acquiring guys at this point, whether it be Keyshawn Nixon off the street, kicking the tires on Jalen Smith. Like, there are some times where he's brought in some guys that maybe they're not a name, David Long, to, a regular schmegular fan, but they might be able to produce. And I think that's been a consistent thing for Goody this whole time. He's always going to bring in someone, whether it's a guy that's been on 8 different practice squads or a guy that has some clout to his name that just can't get a contract. That's great to see. But I'm trying to think if there's anything like super negative you'd want to. I'm trying like high profile guys, or the Rodgers saga went or the Favre saga went. I don't think those are avoidable because they do really, really well PR wise in house to avoid those things. But it's just the nature of business sometimes how things shake out, and they could have gone much worse. Truly, those 2 examples.
The other thing I'll say really quick on this too, overall, is that be extremely happy that the overall structure in Green Bay is what it is. It is really hard and you're seeing it right now. How many franchises that have been awful for years? The Bears, the Lions, and some of these, and I know that the Lions are doing well right now, but some of these teams that looked at Green Bay and said, now you don't have Favre. Now you don't have Rodgers. Now you're going to know what it's like. You guys are going to be one of the worst teams in football every single year. Surprise. They're not. And I'm not saying they're going to go and have these amazing runs and we'll see what Jordan becomes. I'm not crowning anyone yet, but it is very hard with the structure in place and the way that Green Bay does things for this to be a 5 to 8 year long, 3 to 4 win a season franchise. They're just well past that. And I don't think they have the capacity to screw things up that bad the way that they run things in Green Bay. There's too many things that this front office and overall Green Bay structure does well to make it get to that point. So yeah, I think you're in a good place as a Green Bay fan where it's going to take a lot of things going wrong before things bottom out to the point where you're on a level of one of these teams where you're back to the 70s and 80s with the Green Bay Packers. Their structure's been too solid and they're continuing in the right direction, doing things the right way. There may be down years. That's definitely going to be the case, especially if we'll see what happens with Love. But if you don't have a 30 years of Hall of Fame quarterback play, there's going to be down years, no question about it. But I would be shocked if things continue as is, if there's ever a prolonged stretch of just, wow, we can't win 5 games to save our lives. I just can't see it happening.
Absolutely.
I saw a couple of these and Matt, you mentioned it as well. Goody has done a really good job with fringe guys, whether it was finding Devondre Campbell off of late in free agency, becomes a first team All-Pro, Rasul Douglas, Keyshawn Nixon becomes an All-Pro kick returner. Rick Wagner was such a great pickup for the year that he came in and started so much of that season. He has had a very good track record of finding guys. Alan Lazard off of the Jacksonville practice squad. There are a lot of moves that they have made that have looked really, really good in hindsight. And they do deserve a ton of credit for that as well.
I can't think of one where he gave the bag to a guy, Andy, and it didn't work out right now. I can't really, maybe you could make the argument, Za'Darius Smith, maybe with injury and the way he just kind of exited. But outside of that, I think it's still it seems like everything's kind of at least exceeded ROI.
Yeah, I mean, Za'Darius' first year was, on point with any defensive player I've ever seen in Green Bay.
Amazing.
And then the second year was still good, and then his third year he was injured, and then they moved off the contract more due to injury and I think probably some personal, just kind of wore out his welcome a little bit, but
Yes.
I wouldn't put that in the category. Not anyone that they went out and signed, because really Goody did the first four guys right away with Amos Smith, and Turner. Turner, they got mostly good value out of, I would argue. And then he just hasn't had money to spend since then. And like you could argue like the Devin Funchess, like the 1 point some million, the Sammy Watkins, like the 1.8 million or whatever it was, like those didn't turn out, but like those are very low risk, sort of signings. So those would be the only ones. Jimmy Graham. Yeah, that's probably the one. Good call. Scott Foster. That's the one.
Great one.
Martellus Bennett, that was a Ted one, right? Yeah, that was a Ted one. So, but yeah, I would say in the Goody era, probably only Jimmy Graham is probably the only one that hasn't worked out. All right, I probably got one more, and then I got to get out of here. All right, Joseph says this might be a game to call up Jonathan Ford in more 5-man fronts. Also, Andy, did you watch any NCAA conference championships and notice any draft crushes for the Packers? No draft crushes yet. I'll get there, guys. I promise. But as I've said for these past, like anyone that's asked me about draft stuff, if I knew a lot about the draft right now, I would not be doing my job covering the Packers as well as I could right now. So I am trying to absorb as much Packers stuff as I can during the season so I can talk to you guys as educatedly as possible about Packers stuff. And I promise, as you guys know that have been here for a while, as soon as that page turns and the regular season is over, or whenever their season is over and it transitions into off season, you will go into warp speed mode with all of the financials, all of the salary cap stuff, the draft stuff, free agents, who they sign, who they re-sign. It will all be there. I promise. So we will get there in due time. No worries whatsoever. But we'll get to that eventually. As far as Jonathan Ford and 5-man fronts, they have not done that so far. You also have to remember, like, Jonathan Ford still has work to do as a run defender. I know he's got the insane size, but he's got a lot of like similar TJ Slayton issues where they just play too high at times. And now maybe he's worked that out over the course of this season. We just haven't seen him since preseason, but he's not like this surefire, just amazing run defender either. But I do agree with you. I do think you're going to see, especially if Quay's out, somebody asked about Quay earlier as well. My guess is you see a lot of that, what do they call it? Like their penny package, where it's 3 down linemen. I'm not going to say down linemen, 3 interior defensive linemen, where you've got Slayton, Clark, and Wyatt most often, but some of those guys rotated in with 2 edge players, specifically Preston and Gary more often, but they'll rotate those guys in. And then 1 off-ball linebacker, meaning Devondre Campbell, if Quay can't play. I would expect to see a lot of that where you've got more guys, more beef up front, 1 linebacker, a safety like Jonathan Owens or a Rudy Ford dropping down in the box, still having your 3 corners on the outside and extra safety deep. I think we could see a lot of that stuff going forward in this game. Final thoughts, Matt?
Jonathan Ford is a massive human. I once saw him at Best Buy. Enormous human. I see a bunch of questions in the comments. Can't get to all of them. We'd love to. I'm actually screenshotting a couple of them. We'll try to reply to people on Twitter later. But the support on these is awesome, Andy. This is fun. A great way to break in a Friday evening.
Yeah, really appreciate everyone that was able to join in the chat today. Matt, appreciate you joining as well. Was a ton of fun. Wish I could chat a little bit longer, but as I mentioned, got a dinner party to do, got to make a fire in the fireplace. So I'm going to do that. I hope everyone enjoys the heck out of their weekend.
What's on the menu?
We're having taco night tonight. So we're making 2 different, I've already got Fiesta Lime chicken cooking. I'm going to make some ground beef tacos. We're going to have some tostadas. We're going to have we got hard shell, soft shell, nachos, whatever you want. We got onions, cilantro. We got the whole 9 yards. We're going all out. So it's going to be a lot of fun.
Any hot takes when it comes to Mexican food, though? That's, I think, what the people are actually going to want here. Do you have any hot takes?
I don't think so. I'm not a black olives guy. Love hot sauce. Make the hotter the better. Give me all the hot sauce. Give me all the nachos. Give me all the chips. I'm good with that. So yeah, I don't think I have any I will say I am much more a shredded cheese guy than a nacho cheese guy. Not a huge nacho cheese sauce guy. Give me the real shredded cheese more often than not, but love me some Mexican food. Not too many hot takes. One of my favorite things, this will surprise you as well. My favorite all-time meals is a portobello enchilada. So give me the mushroom enchilada. One of my faves. Surprising to somebody who is very picky with food. All right. That's going to do it. Appreciate you guys a ton. Matt, thank you as well. I will see you all soon, but until next time, and as always, go Pack Go.